Hey y'all, what is up everybody? What is up YouTube? Sparky Marky, and I'm back to continue on the Nightmare on Elm Street films. And also, with all out of the way, let's talk about the second installment. Okay. So after that, the studio greenlit a second installment, right? Those who have seen it or haven't, anybody familiar with A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge? Which this time it was directed by Jack Sholder. That's his name. And Wes Craven didn't come back. He must have read the early treatments, and apparently he wasn't too pleased with it or too keen on it. So yeah. And it stars Mark Patton, Kim Myers, Robert Russler, and the great Mr. Cooliger. And has Robert Englund as our villainous villain, Fred Krueger. So yeah, and also Cooliger had another hit at that time, which came out about 3 months before this one. Yeah, in August, he was in The Return of the Living Dead as the boss, Bert Wilson, if I said his name right. And in this movie right now, on Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he is playing Ron, what's the character's name? Ken Walsh, who plays the husband slash father in this movie. And of course, they buy the house from... the story of this takes place 5 years after apparently defeating the villainous Freddy Krueger. The family, known as the Walshes, move into the house where Nancy Thomas used to live. And apparently, nightmare ensues on our male character named Jesse Walsh. And somehow he starts having nightmares, and suddenly there's Krueger. And the next thing you know, that in a hard way, he finds the diary that belonged to Nancy Thompson. Like, what? Yeah, this kid found the diary that belonged to the final girl? Seriously? And details about nightmares, which of course strikingly similar to what he's experienced. And of course, somehow one pet of the spontaneous combustion of one of the pet birds explodes, gets fried, and then explodes. How's that possible? What the heck? What's wrong with the house? And suddenly, he starts having another nightmare, and he meets Freddy. And of course, havoc ensues and crazy things, and suddenly reveals to the male character, "You got the body, but I got the brain." Yeah, more villainous than you can ever imagine. So yeah, and the famous line, "You're all my children." So yeah, whoop-de-doo on that, huh? How crazy can that be? And also, plus it's my buddy Planet CHH's favorite sequel. So yeah, that's how it is. So yeah, then it was on a it was on a much big budget on $3 million compared to the first one was only $1.1 million. That one made about 57.1 million, the first one, and then this one was released on November 1st, 1985, and it was on a budget of 3 million, and then only made 30 million. Not exactly the big hit they were hoping for, but they never gave up that easily. But anyways, so yeah, it's very crazy. It's very intense. There are some sort of whatchamacallit subtext. I'm not gonna get into those. I didn't even knew what those were. I just thought that the character was being pressured and somehow Fred Krueger is like manipulating him and something. And then somehow is experiencing what the previous character had. And goes to a factory to where Fred Krueger used to work. So yeah, and insane goes crazy that the male victim has the body, but the villain has the brain. How crazy is that? Now using him to enter the real world. Wow. But anyways, Let's stick this inside the PS5 and see the details, the menu and the qualms. And you're going to be seeing pictures of the quality. Like now, let's do it. All right, now we have Freddy's Revenge or Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Here is like we had before with the scene selections, chapters, and all that. Yeah, 25 chapters. We got audio, the original theatrical English track. We got the English track remastered. We got from French, Dutch, Italiano, Latino, Latin, Espanol, and Castellano, Spanish tracks. You got your subtitles, same as the tracks, and of course English for those who have hard of hearing. Then we got your special features: Freddy on 8th Street, Heroes and Villains, Male Witch, Psychosexual Circus. 4 features of these. So let's start for this one first. So on Freddy on 8th Street, which is about a 5-minute and 30-second featurette interview with the director Jack Shoulder, if I said his name right. Also, Jeffrey Wells, a publicist for the sequel, and you have Robert Englund talking about that there were about publicized. There were some, how do you call it? Interesting thing was that while in post they hired publicist, a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Wells, somebody he knew might want to talk to about him, living in California, used to live in California, and was trying to uh, come up with an angle to publicize the sequel. So he knows that to come with various angles, and one of his angles is American kids obsessed with Freddy Krueger, and were like kind of funny about that idea. A few articles somewhere or other, kids say we're dressing Freddy for Halloween, or the kids are dressing up as Freddy, going on a screening on Elm Street, and it's like the Rocky Horror Picture Show or something. So kind of this was like a good angle to promote the sequel, and think that it was an angle that he think it can actually happen was definitely different. And also you have Mr. Wells talking about there were aspect levels of letters, and was sitting at his office in New Line, and somehow they made mentions of Freddy being kind of a hip hop cool, sort of ironic wink wink and cult figure. If anyone could guess, wink wink was obviously because he was venal and homicidal and evil, but there was just kind of posturing that some people were talking kind of a cool into him with his attitude, and whatever meant ultimately was something he definitely was, the publicist was thinking, and anything printing at the time, seeing when particularly letters that you remember from fans, and of course at Columbia University, who were expressing things that It was seed of, it was based upon where there's smoke, there's fire, one indication of 100 others. He got a call to try to find any theaters to heard about people coming dressed up as Freddy. An invasion, an invasive to something of the lines, nuisance, quirky like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, at midnight showings of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And then the director says at the screening of the first movie, invited the press and said to them about Freddy impersonators, someone hiring people to be Freddy impersonators, and a few people came and weren't hired by the director or the producer, and so they thought there's something going on here, I think. And one particular moment when Halloween 1980, it wasn't until 84 which we got Robert Englund to come up with the makeup at the Halloween parade on 34th Street, going across. Then one thing they didn't have was the light on him, and it was people not recognizing the most fun thing and ever, because people were saying, "Yo, Freddy!" There's a real New York moment to have him kind of basically walked in about 5 or 6 miles and a lot. Robert Englund's interviewed and he talks about the non-intellectual of Freddy experience and saluted logo with the cross, with the claws of his weapon, snapping with a burnt brim hat, and the titled of crazy threats, and becomes the logo he represents. And certainly contemporarily, the boogeyman probably represents all that's disgusting and evil you have to confront the world and say, hey, it's time to move out. It's time to grow up and pay your own bills. And he's coming in life, and life's not fair. And you have to go, a lot of suburban teenagers have been cuddled in the 80s and Senate. Pharmaceutical phenomenal. And only piece of Freddy memorabilia only really come up is in the French posters of the film. And this one story, sort of soft focus classic, early in the 60s, European versions of the American shuriken suburban house. It's not a track suburban house of today that's a little boutiqued but real plain up, where we're sort of looking around low angles and everything. Then there's a lot of sky outside, coming to the sky's claws, and it's Freddy. And great poster design that they did. And he thinks that is the evil polluted of suburbans and everywhere. Even to this day, people still ask him to sign different various posters of the film. Wow. So it's a great interview with Jeffrey Wells, director Jack Shoulder, and Robert Englund. So yeah, very in-depth. And now on to the next feature. Alright, so the next feature is Heroes and Villains. Interviews with Bob Shea, Wes Craven, and Jack Shoulder, the director. And talking about how he became big successful with people around him and grew up in the same block in the neighborhood, and was excited and how do you put the word? At point real, and Bob Shea realizes that being not only a franchise but kind of their bread and butter, because they were not having any products or money activities when he had an office and above a bar at 12, a bar called Smith's Bar and Grill on 14th Street, on 13th Street, and University, placed in Manhattan. They frankly didn't have hell of a lot. So they said something like maybe could turn it could be visible. They hire the right guy for their film inspectors, to write scripts. David Kaskin and an old friend of his who he had written and directed Alone in the Dark, and had the very first trailer for a very first movie during the end of August, and Hotel in the Ozone in August of 1967. That was several years, and they remained good friends. And then another friend who directed the film was Jack Shoulder. And of course, he trusted Bob with Brian Trust, so he had read the script for A Nightmare on Elm Street and actually the Cannes Film Festival, where had gone to sell his very first feature, and known comments on staying out of California while or living in California, and he has shot briefly, and he met Wes Craven, and briefly actually remembers. And this is of course Jack Shoulders up next for the interview. So this is him speaking about living in California, and while shooting, he met Craven. Craven actually, and then remembers on the very first day of shooting the scenes where Freddy walks around the ceiling, and then he had the cameraman strapped into the flag section and then suspended upside down, and Brave on the west side strapped the chair in a 20-minute up angle upside down. And two kinds of people there are: the people who really express themselves through the horror film genre, and there's other people when making horror films as way of getting expressed themselves in spite of the horror film. Wes is Wes is the former and the latter, and it's interesting in the first film. And the next one is we have and also Wes Craven is interviewed, the creator of the first Nightmare, and it was interesting. The first film, convinced as everything, and then the sequel himself in the beginning and middle end. And when New Line set off to make the sequel to for Nightmare 2, they sent him the script and asked him to be a part of it because of the relationship, cordial and cordial, and just couldn't see in it if the script any man felt of what was happening clearly just before some silly special effects, and like there was a basic mistakes of bringing Freddy out into the daylight or into the room, and the pool scene where you have him running around chasing the teenagers who were taller than Robert was, and felt the essence what the character's smart ways to do it is that Jack Shoulder, who he knows who he thinks he did a very good, knows he thinks he did a very good job, never overcame the problems of the script. And Jack Shoulder says that basically slightly tendencies anyways, and said he didn't feel burden to follow the template of the original film. Clearly, neither New Line and which Freddy goes around terrorizing kids at a party, and always figured that he always meant, he always ambiguously in these films, Freddy could think very clearly, carefully, certain flaws in every single of the sequels, sort of about the concept idea. For what's happening here is in the story, this kid named Jesse moves into the house where Freddy did very evil things, and somehow Freddy decides to get into the world through the kid Jesse, except sometimes Jesse sees him doing stuff, and other times literally metamorphosize Jesse's body as he does in the sequence in Grady's room. And once he's out in the real world, all these sorts of things, like instance where he's arguing with Lisa in the house. Why is he trying to kill her? Boom. Well, part of Freddy is that there's some parts of the kid Jesse in him. Freddy's now, he doesn't think to buy either, looking at having seen the film, and sort of the five other ones that have come after. there's a whole lore of Freddy, and there's rules, and there are kinds of things that are know about Freddy that didn't know about it and realize when started to do this for nobody and who knew Freddy and became Freddy. Nobody had no idea that Freddy had become a franchise and became their. Nobody knew that Freddy was the face of the franchise, and as far as they all know, it was a scary film franchise, and of course, it's become the boogeyman as well. Talking about Jason and the movies, it's not all about Jason. Nobody gives a damn about Jason, and he just pops up and starts hitting victims with impaling them with a spear, chopping them off, and end up, and that's these focuses, and they focused on the effects, makeup effects, the gore. The things are just into a huge level of gore. Everybody knows could be chopped or got chopped off. The cycle of horror died again in the mid 90s, and now it may be coming back. Sorts of things. If all of horror films in the past, like talking about, for instance, the monsters were kind of the heroes, like the Mummy, Frankenstein, Dracula. Those are the heroes of the Universal monsters. Like they're the heroes of horror, and it's becoming. And now Freddy has become the hero in the series of the films of Nightmare on Elm Street. And when had the idea, sort of this was going down during the production of Nightmare 2. So yeah, that was a very big mouthful. Alright, next feature. Alrighty, so the third special feature is called The Male Witch, interview with Jack Shoulder and special effects artist Kevin Yeager. Mr. Shoulder talks about Kevin Yeager, who was a young guy and came through his agent around the time he asked to interview Kevin, and talked about the makeup effects for the film. And he had this book about all things. Kevin Yeager had his own book about a young guy, and he made himself to look like an old man. And then he took the old man, a guy, and made him look like a old man to a park, and he took pictures of the old guy interacting with kids, and everybody's looking just as real as the old man, and realize you can use him for that. And then Mr. Yeager goes into his studio and shows a picture, and he showed the director to show him the photo of the old man, and which is a friend of his who now runs Amalgamated Dynamics. And he put in old age makeup on his friend and showed him to Mr. Shoulder and got him the job for Nightmare on Elm Street 2. And was very impressed to do about the old man makeup. And so they hired him to redesign the look of Freddy and based it on Robert Englund's face, and tried to find, as he was more terrified in the first movie, and then had things sort of like felt to do a lot of research about burn victims and burn makeup, and very difficult to replicate burn makeup, but at the same time he had to look very experienced burns from head to toe and everything, and the color textures, and very skinned to make the individual look so burned, and burned from his neck and his face everywhere, and felt totally on the third degree burned. How he meant was he did a lot of study and looked more and more skeletalness on burn downs and across the face, every detail in the angles, which he had to look again related to being a male witch, sort of with the hook on the nose and overbearing warts and other parts, and focus those things quite a lot frightening. And you look at images of burned victims, and had to take off their eyelid, and how the fire took off their hair and eyelids. All right, of course the actor wouldn't appreciate that when he does that, and he had to create his own manual. Um, but of course they couldn't do it on the actor. And then, of course, sort of focused on the skin, the textures, the colorings, and they had to find these manuals for it look quite frightening about doing burn makeup on the actor. So yeah, it had to be very convincing, how to look realistic, as good as possible. So yeah, folks, amazing, right? Alrighty. So the next feature that you're going to be seeing is called Psychosexual Circus, and you have interview with the with director and screenwriter and producer, well, production assistant, whom of course would later direct the sixth installment of A Nightmare on Elm Street, Rachel Taglier, and you have director Jack Shoulder, and you have Robert Englund interviewed, and Miss Taglier talks about um, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and the point of view of the sequel is where the film is heading to, and make Freddy scarier, and what really worked in the first movie, and they had to get elemental problems. And for the director of photography, Jacques Hadskin, said again, process and material that memorized, as she memorized the material, and also focusing what the director of photography told him there was problem in the script about Freddy swimming in the pool and how they're going to pull that off, him in the daylight, and it's completely different with screaming, with teenagers or running around, things melting, the hot temperatures, and really going to work. Well, they had to realize the mistake that made on the second film, and think the turnaround, and they had to and they had to make sure not to do the same mistake that on the third one as opposed to the second film. And what was awful, and Jack Schultz, and that's the interview with Miss Taglier. There was no. He talked about. Mr. Schultz talks about there were no female leads in the second film. It had feminine components, and they had realized that it's a male character, and the actor who was hired to play the role of the character was not a macho dude. He sort of had a look a little Johnny Depp-esque, but he was no Johnny Depp. And so yeah. So they hired this actor Mark Patton to play the role, and he had to be like much of a scaredy cat. I'm not gonna go on too much about the qualms that went around. But also, if anybody had seen Nightmare 2, let me know. Did you see it for the first time, or did you heard it from friends or relatives, or your family members told you about this movie, or you looked it up yourself? And yeah. So yeah, and also talked about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and Robert Englund talks about the sequel, and he talked about that the film did well overseas in Europe. It did well as the first, well, it did well, great overseas in Europe, staying true, and did bring up a lot of sort of psychosexual aspects that were like hinted, with one problem. And they kind of broke the rules of the Bible that Craven had said, which Freddy's always in a dream, even if thinks Freddy's in reality, but he really thinks that Freddy is a point of a joke, and that's the gimmick, and for bringing Freddy out of the dream world and into the real world, which indeed has some sort of love or hate. So yeah. So that's all the features in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. So yeah. And let's see. I'm going to show you pictures from the movie, just the quality of it and the aspects of it. And tell me what you guys think of it. Let's go. Alrighty. So, folks, tell me what you guys think of the special features and the details of the of the picture quality. And also, I give the audio about a 6.5 out of 10. Actually, 9 out of 10, definitely. And the quality, and also, and anything else more. The film was great. And also, like, advice from my pal Planet CHH. I'll leave you a link in the description for his review of 2 and 3 as well. And I'll leave you the link for the special features as well. It's better to see the movie in the dark rather with the lights on. So yeah, that's his advice, and I like to follow that way. So if you like content like this or any of the content on this channel, please click the bell on the subscribe button to be notified of all new uploads. Like the videos, always appreciate thumbs ups. Have any opinion related to the contents, comments down below. And also, let's give a shout out to that thing of ours, TCF, to the physical media collectors, the watch collectors, toy collectors, autograph collectors, and all you collectors out there. Shouts to you all. And especially, let's give a shout out to my subscribers. You know who you all are. Shouts to you all, cats and dogs. And also, I mean, the YouTube posts daily or weekly, whatever. But keep an eye on it. Like I said, click the bell on the subscribe button to be notified. Whether I'm uploading on the YouTube post or posting videos. But keep an eye on the YouTube posts. You'll never know what's going to pop up. Anything else more. So, yeah, that's all there is, folks. And I'll go back to the third one really soon. So, y'all, this is Sparky Marky Mark signing off. Y'all, take care. God bless you. Hear you. And see you on the next vid. Detroit Tuesday, y'all. And later. Ah!